Pawpaw fruit, the fruit that you may have never heard of, but they have an intriguing and complex history in North America. Though largely forgotten in modern times, this custardy fruit, with its flavors reminiscent of banana, mango, and melon, was once a staple for indigenous peoples across the eastern United States. But what's the story behind this remarkable fruit? How did it fade from our kitchens, and how is it making a comeback? Join us as we explore the history of the pawpaw fruit. The pawpaw is native to eastern North America, stretching from the Great Lakes down to the Mississippi River and all the way to the southeast. For centuries, indigenous peoples of North America, such as the Powhatan, Cherokee, and Shawnee, grew, ate, and cultivated pawpaws. They even used the tree's bark for cordage and nets. In fact, the word pawpaw itself likely comes from the Algonquian language, and the scientific name Asimina triloba reflects its deep roots in North American ecosystems. When European settlers arrived, they were introduced to the pawpaw by the indigenous peoples. The first written records of pawpaw come from 1541, when the De Soto expedition mentioned the fruit. Later, in 1806, Lewis and Clark famously relied on pawpaws as a food source during their exploration of the American West. Early U.S. presidents like Thomas Jefferson even planted pawpaws at Monticello, with Jefferson himself sending pawpaw seeds across the Atlantic to Europe. Pawpaws were even described as George Washington's favorite dessert, though we don't have definitive proof of this. During the colonial period, pawpaws became essential for early American settlers. Their ability to ripen quickly and provide nourishment made them a valuable resource during long, harsh winters and times of scarce food. Pawpaw trees were often found in early homesteads, especially in areas with rich, fertile soils along the riverbanks. The fruit's versatility was also key. It was used in a variety of dishes, from stews to pies, and served as a sweet treat during special occasions and celebrations. Settlers quickly learned that pawpaws could fill the gap left by other fruits that were not yet accessible or ripened during the colder months. Moreover, the pawpaw's resistance to the harsh weather conditions of early America made it an important crop for self-sufficiency. Its hardiness and ability to grow in shade allowed settlers to rely on it as a source of nutrition when other crops might fail. The pawpaw didn't just serve as a food source. It also played a role in the cultural fabric of early American communities. Many early settlers came from agricultural backgrounds, where communal sharing of resources was essential for survival. The pawpaw was often shared during community gatherings and festivals, where it was prepared in various forms, such as pawpaw pudding or pawpaw bread. It became a symbol of the American frontier, a food that embodied resilience and ingenuity in the face of adversity. In some regions, the pawpaw became associated with harvest rituals and family traditions. Its seasonal availability marked the end of summer and the beginning of the fall harvest, making it an important food to celebrate as the community transitioned into the colder months. Early American literature and folk songs also referenced the fruit, further embedding it in the cultural consciousness of the time. Beyond its cultural significance, the pawpaw also played an important role in the early American economy. During the 18th and early 19th centuries, when transportation networks were still developing, pawpaw trees were often found near settlements and trading routes. The fruit was valuable not only for its food uses, but also for its medicinal properties. Indigenous peoples and settlers alike used the pawpaw for a variety of therapeutic purposes, including as a remedy for intestinal issues and digestive ailments. Farmers and settlers would often trade pawpaw fruit or pawpaw-based products in local markets, adding to its importance as a regional commodity. Though the pawpaw never reached the level of commercial production like other fruits, it helped sustain local economies, especially in areas where other crops were not as viable due to climate conditions or soil quality. Moreover, pawpaw cultivation and its economic value were closely tied to the expansion of American agriculture. It was considered a valuable crop for new settlers who needed hardy, low-maintenance fruit trees to add to their homesteads. In some areas, pawpaw orchards were established, and they became part of the diverse agricultural landscape of early America. By the mid-19th century, the rise of industrialized farming and the increased use of mechanized tools transformed agriculture in the United States. The demand for high-yield crops like wheat, corn, and cotton soared as monoculture farming became more widespread. These crops were well suited for large-scale cultivation and transportation. Pawpaws, on the other hand, were fragile, had a short shelf life, and were difficult to transport. As a result, they were increasingly seen as impractical for the evolving industrial agricultural system, pushing them into obscurity. In the late 19th century, the development of the canning industry revolutionized the preservation of fruits and vegetables. Fruits like apples, peaches, and tomatoes could now be canned and sold year-round. However, the pawpaw's delicate nature and high water content made it unsuitable for canning. Unlike fruits that could be processed and preserved in jars, pawpaws couldn't withstand the canning process, leading to their decline in popularity. The rise of preserved fruits in the market, coupled with advancements in refrigeration, meant that pawpaws were replaced by more commercially viable fruits. As the 20th century progressed, the expansion of global trade networks and advancements in refrigeration further marginalized the pawpaw. Tropical fruits, such as bananas, pineapples, and citrus, became widely available due to their ability to be transported across long distances. These fruits were not only easier to grow in warmer climates, but also had longer shelf lives, making them perfect for shipping across the globe. In contrast, the pawpaw, which was restricted to a small part of the U.S. and couldn't survive long shipments, became an outdated and forgotten crop as global trade pushed tropical fruits to the forefront of the market. Despite its widespread popularity and use, the pawpaw never became a mainstay in the agricultural world. Shipping difficulties, a short shelf life, and fragility meant that this delicate fruit couldn't thrive in emerging global trade networks. While bananas were shipped across oceans, pawpaws couldn't make the leap. Slowly, pawpaws were forgotten, becoming a regional fruit in the wilds of North America. But the story of the pawpaw didn't end there. Fast forward to the 1990s, when interest in heirloom crops and forgotten fruits began to rise. Kentucky State University launched a breeding program to develop hardier pawpaw varieties. The result was a resurgence of interest in pawpaws, especially as people rediscovered the fruit's unique flavor, a perfect blend of banana, mango, and melon. Today, there are pawpaw festivals, including the popular Ohio Pawpaw Festival, where people gather to celebrate the fruit, learn how to grow it, and even taste pawpaw-based food. Interestingly, the pawpaw is pollinated by flies and beetles, which is quite unusual for fruit. This quirky form of pollination makes it a bit tricky to grow, but with the right conditions, pawpaw trees can thrive in temperate forests across the eastern U.S. Additionally, the zebra swallowtail butterfly also relies on pawpaws as its host plant, further adding to the fruit's ecological significance. In recent years, pawpaws have experienced a revival thanks to the local foods movement and greater interest in native crops. But still, pawpaws remain largely unknown to many outside the regions where they grow. With their creamy texture and complex flavor, they're being rediscovered by chefs, farmers, and food enthusiasts alike. As the pawpaw gains popularity, it seems that we may have just scratched the surface of this remarkable fruit's potential. So, the next time you find yourself wandering through a temperate forest or a local farmer's market, keep an eye out for the pawpaw. This ancient fruit, which once nourished the indigenous peoples of North America, might just be the next food trend of the future. And it all began here, on the banks of North America's great rivers, where the pawpaw took root and where it may one day again thrive across the land. And that's the fascinating story of the pawpaw, a fruit with a rich history and a bright future. From its deep roots in North American soil to its resurgence in modern times, the pawpaw continues to captivate the hearts of food enthusiasts, historians, and eco-conscious individuals alike. Whether you're tasting for the first time or rediscovering its unique flavor, the pawpaw is a reminder of how the past can shape the present and future. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of the pawpaw fruit.